So, going back to an alien kick real fast, we're going to be talking about what if the Xenomorph existed in Warhammer 40k. I know what you're thinking already. There's no way. There's literally millions of more terrifying things than the Xenomorphs. Yes, the Xenomorphs are what you could consider to be like the apex predator of their universe. With really, if you want to make it crosshairs, the only ones that could really like challenge them are, of course, the Predators, aka the Yautja, and the Engineers. If we're going by Dark Horse comic standards, that's what I'm talking about. But if we're just having just solo alien universe, yeah, they're the apex predator of that universe. Like, there's no real competition, is what I'm saying. But the one thing you have to really like take into account is that the Xenomorphs, while they're not conquerors, they're animals. That's what they are. They're intelligent animals, but they're animals nonetheless. That's what I'm trying to say, is that they are essentially just animals. That's all they are. And they don't have like dreams of like conquest or conquering worlds. They have nothing. They really have nothing to really go on, is what I'm saying. There's really just kind of this thought process of, hey, we're kind of just here. That's what they are. Is that they're kind of just here, and they just want to exist. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Like, I just had my brain just, like, shorted out. I apologize for that. So, what would it be like if you brought the Xenomorphs to the Warhammer universe? I will make this argument of that they are not going to conquer the universe. They can't. They physically can't. There's too many more dangerous threats. They don't have that kind of mentality. They don't really have a means to like spread themselves out the way they could in their universe, because the main way they couldn't travel by space. The only way they basically were spread across the galaxy like a plague was because mankind were a bunch of corporate greedy dicks. So the fall of man in the Dark Horse comics and in a lot of the books and in the movies was that they just fucked around and find out. You are not going to get that with this version of humanity. This version of humanity is going to just see a thing literally called a xenomorph. The thing they have a severe phobia and hatred towards. Man, I just stumbled through that. Like, I just couldn't get the words out. And just hate. They just have this absolute hatred and xenophobia towards. So they're not going to be like, ooh, let's see if we can make money off of and try to make them into weapons. No, that is not what is going to happen. Holy shit, I am tripping over words hard. That's not what is going to happen in this scenario. What's going to happen is that the Xenomorphs are going to be on like one planet, and if they get caught, they're going to put up a fight, and I think they could kill, depending on how big the Xenomorph Hive is. The Xenomorph Hive could actually probably do a bit of damage to the Imperium. If it's not, unless there's Space Marines there. If it's just your basic Astra Militarum, they could probably, like, if it's just battling guardsmen, your basic guardsmen with las guns and whatnot, I could actually see the Xenomorphs doing some damage. Now, the Xenomorphs would probably the only chance they'd have of propagating further is one of two ways. And it's going to sound a little weird. The first one is they encounter the Tyranids, and the Tyranids intermingle with the Xenomorphs. Whether they consume the Xenomorphs and take their biomass, which a Tyranid-Xenomorph hybrid is a really horrifying thought, but that could easily happen, or they just start interbreeding and the swarms become one. That's the more peaceful option, but the former is probably what's going to happen, is that the Xenomorphs and the Tyranids would get into a war, they consume the Xenomorph biomass, and make it even more eldritch horror than before. And through that, they manage to propagate through the universe. The second way is through one race that could find them interesting and try to manipulate to use them. That being the Tau. Now you're probably thinking, why the hell would the Tau of all races, the one who preaches the greater good, want to use the Xenomorphs? Well, look at the Kroot. First off, fucking cannibals. Look at the Kroot. I could see that the Tau would see them as just animals, but however, they could also see the potential of using them on the battlefield. The Tau would probably, if they encountered the Xenomorphs, would realize, oh, they're just animals. Well, we can use that. Like, the Xenomorphs would probably be used by the Tau as like an attack dog. That's how I kind of see it, is that the Tau would take a Xenomorph queen, take some eggs, and try to, like, bend them to their will, take queens and start making them for, like, breeders, and make in their heads, they're probably thinking, like, we'll set them loose on the Imperium, on the Orcs, on other races, and we'll use them as, like, frontline infantry. They don't really, we're not going to feel bad about it. Like, yeah, they're animals and the greater good and whatnot, but they're going to die for the greater good, and it's less Tau warriors getting killed. So we can send them in to, on the front lines to slaughter and kill everyone, and then for the greater good, we'll start, like, killing all of them as well, killing what the Xenomorphs leave behind. It's a brilliant idea. Oh shit, one got in my mouth. That was a chest buster. Yeah. So that's not how it's gonna play out, because the Xenomorphs are kind of smart. So I would imagine they probably, like, hitch rides on, like, Tau ships, or even, like, sneak aboard. If there was, like, a scouting party of the Imperium, they probably sneak aboard those ships. And there's a lot, and depending on the size of the Imperial ship or Tau ship, they could seriously hide on a world, hide in a ship for, like, ages and not get caught, depending on how many Xenomorphs are there, and probably build a nest in these kind of ships without being detected, unless they get found by a psyker or something. But then again, I have read books where, like, people with mental abilities can't really sense them, but psyker, it's kind of a toss-up with that one. So maybe psychers could detect them, or not. That's a toss-up. Anyway, so the Xenomorphs, like I said, are not conquerors, but they're going to, if they somehow got on a planet, like, let's say they got on an Imperial world, I kind of imagine how they'd operate is similar to, like, a gene stealer cult, where they would just be going around kidnapping people, like, scurrying around in the streets. If it's just a small number, if, like, it's one queen and they're trying to, and the drones and the warriors are trying to make sure that she's feeding and, like, growing to replicate more, I imagine they'll probably work as, like, the gene stealers, or even like the Skaven in Warhammer Fantasy, where they would just, like, scurry out in the streets, take people, kidnap them, and bring them down to their lair, not as, like, servants, but as, like, a new host for another facehugger. Keep that up until, like, they get big enough to, like, explode out of the underground and attack a surprised Astra Militarum and an entire hive city. That's how I kind of imagine it going down. And not like they would do it to conquer it. It's more of like a, what is called in most entomology a threshold, where essentially what happens is that, and this is seen in a lot of insect hives especially, is where the hive reaches a certain number and they just have to expand. So if you have a Xenomorph hive reaching that threshold number, they have to expand, and the only way out is up. So they get upwards, they start swarming on a... Now, it won't be like a gene stealer cult where everyone's like, oh, it's a gene stealer, open fire. It won't be like that. It'd be more like a actual, like, united front fighting the Xenomorphs, but again, you're fighting a being that's pretty intelligent, has acid blood, and knows its way around, skulking in the shadows. So, while I don't think the Xenomorphs would be, like, a major player, because, you're in a world of, I don't know, Tyranids, which are, like, the Xenomorphs with a hive mind and space travel. You have, Astartes, which we could argue all day and night if, like, Xenomorph blood could melt a Space Marine's armor. That's a question in the comments below. Do you think Xenomorph blood could melt Space Marine armor? Let me know in the comments below. Or melt the living body of a Necron. There you go. But do I think they would thrive as like a species on a planet or two? Yeah, I think they could definitely thrive in the world of Warhammer 40K, but not like as a conqueror, but more of like a species you'd have to like avoid contact with. Like if it this would have to be like Exterminatus at some point. Although the Imperium, yes, we all like to make the joke of Exterminatus. That doesn't really happen a lot, and it would really only happen if the Xenomorph planet, the Xenomorph-infested planet got to such a, high level of infestation, which I doubt would actually happen. But yeah. The Xenomorphs would definitely be a credible threat. But it would just be like an animal species. Don't fuck with it. Like, that's the whole thing. This wouldn't be spread around like human greed or whatnot. Maybe by Tau ignorance or some other race. But I don't see humanity having a hand in it, other than we're going to fucking end this creature's existence. That's how I see them playing out, because it's another Xeno scum. But yeah, there's really not much else I can say other than I think they'd be a cool threat for the Imperium and for the other races. Also, can we just acknowledge that, like, if a Xenomorph got its hold on an orced out Xenomorph would be terrifying? Can we all just agree that would just be the fucking worst for everybody? Right? Like, I think that would just be a Xenomorph orc, or a Xenomorph who gets its latches onto a Chaos Marine or Chaos Worshipper. I don't know if it would stick, but still, that's a horrifying concept, or a fan art for everybody to draw. Just not sexually, unless it's Slanesh, I guess. Anyway, so you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think it would be like if the Xenomorphs existed in Warhammer 40k? Just comment below, let me know. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.